Mrs. Dogs.
I said, I'm looking at this going around. Yeah, she did that to me. You got nothing to They're on. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of Wyndham City Council this Tuesday, the 25th of June 2019. In the spirit of reconciliation, before we begin this meeting, I acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. Please stand for the opening prayer and welcome. We pray for guidance in the Council's decision-making to achieve the best outcome for the people of Wyndham. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members of the gallery, press, councillors and staff here tonight for the Ordinary Council meeting. Some of you may have seen the notices in the foyer, but for those who didn't, I would like to make you aware of the following. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will be archived and made available on Council's website. Whilst all care has been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained, please be aware that your presence may be recorded. Item 2, apologies and requests for leave. Madam CEO, do we have any apologies and requests for leave this evening?
Madam Mayor, we do have one apology this evening from Councillor Heather Marcus, who was unable to be in attendance this evening. We also have an apology from Councillor Henry Barlow, who is already on an approved leave of absence. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, do I have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Khan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor John Gibbons. I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 3, declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict of interest, conflicting personal interest in any item of the agenda. Councillors, does anyone have any conflicts of interest or conflicting personal interest that they wish to declare in relation to tonight's agenda? Councillor Maynard.
Madam Mayor, I'll be declaring a personal interest in 6.4.4.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Ahn, are you declaring a conflict tonight? In the budget, item 6.2.2.2. Mossfield Reserve? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Item 4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. That the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on Tuesday, 7 May 2019 as prepared and circulated be confirmed, and special council meeting held on Tuesday, 11 June 2019 as prepared and circulated be confirmed. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Gibbons, do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Maynard, thank you. I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 5, deputations and presentations. So on Saturday the 18th of May, as part of Wyndham's International Investment and Economic Development Strategy, Councillor Henry Barlow and Director of Deals, Investments and Major Projects, Kate Roffey, and myself travelled to China to formally sign a new Friendship City Agreement with the Mayor of Changzhou, Mr Ding Chen, and Changzhou's most senior government representatives. The agreement was signed on the evening of Sunday the 19th of May and signifies friendship and cooperation, shared learnings and an effort to develop economic and trade opportunities for both cities. This evening, I have the pleasure in presenting the Friendship City Relationship Agreement between Wyndham City Council and the City of Changzhou of the People's Republic of China, and a framed paper scroll etching presented as a gift to Wyndham City. It is important to note that a full report on the delegation's visit to Changzhou will be presented at a future council meeting. Thank you. Madam CEO, I'd like to present to you the scroll that I do think says Changzhou and Wyndham.
Terrific. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And also I would like to present the official agreement that was signed by both the mayors. I'll turn that around the right way. There we go. So there you go.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Well done.
Item 6, Officer Report. 6.1, Petitions. There are nil. Item 6.2, Strategic Reports. Item 6.2.1, Consideration of submissions regarding the proposed annual plan and budget 2019 to 2020. The report is on pages 9 to 12. The recommendation is on pages 10 to 11, and the attachments on pages 12 to 26. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Councillor Hooper, would you like to speak to this item? Okay, thank you. Councillors, are there any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.2.2, Adoption of Council's Annual Plan and Budget 2019 to 2020. The report is on pages 27 to 33. The recommendation is on pages 28 to 30, and the attachments are printed in a separate document on pages 3 to 100. In order to manage this item in accordance with the conflict of interest provisions of the Local Government Act, there will be two motions for this item. Due to Councillor Marcus being in apologies this evening, point 1 of the recommendation will be combined as a motion with points 3 to 20. Councillor Ahn, as you have declared a conflict of interest for point 2 of the recommendation, I ask that you leave the chamber whilst the other councillors vote on this item, please. So, councillors, do I have a mover for point 2 of the recommendation, which is where Councillor Ahn has declared a conflict, the following capital projects be accepted as part of the proposed annual plan and budget for 2019-2020, the Mossville Reserve Netball Pavilion at $263,000. Do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Are there any councillors that would like to speak to this motion? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Secret door. Thank you, Councillor Ahn. We will now consider the remaining parts of the recommendation, being point 1 and 3 to 20. Councillors, do I have a mover for points 1 and 3 to 20 of the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Are there any councillors that would like to speak to this motion? Councillors, I'm now putting this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Well, no one put their hand up. I didn't see it. Councillor? Councillor Gilligan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to speak on what could well be the final budget that I see to its completion in this chamber. This budget has funded a series of policy priorities that I've prosecuted since coming to office in 2016. Initiatives including a planning review to mitigate the scourge of future pokies venues in this city, establishing a new library in Williams Landing, and looking at a real strategy for the RDF that has been, in my view, the greatest untapped asset for our council until, of course, this council term. I've always believed that we cannot continue to rely on the profits derived from the RDF to fund council projects whilst neglecting our obligation to deliver a cleaner and more productive waste facility. The formal separation of operating profits from the RDF is critical to not only investing in the site, but more importantly, the governance and commercial potential that this incredibly important public asset provides moving forward. I'm glad to see this work will be undertaken in this budget. This budget also provides ongoing funding for our Urban Futures team to continue the important work on future planning in our city. And in my view, this council must be brave to move to protect and maximise land use in and around our train stations in the same way we're doing in the Werribee CBD. And I intend to have more to say on that over the coming budget cycle. There are some important contemporary challenges that this budget outlines that council will continue to talk through with the community. And it's all about managing our expectations and indeed the expectations of our community whilst making sure that we deliver a fiscally prudent budget. I noticed a report that was handed down by the Essential Services Commission which highlighted council's employee costs when it came to both the pre and post rate capping reviews and subsequent legislations, and in particular pointed out the significant increase that we have undertaken in employee costs over the last half a decade. Now, some will be quick to attack this as a measure worth reining in, but the reality is that we face an unprecedented burden of service delivery, unlike just about any other council in Victoria. And that is something that this council is incredibly proud of, particularly when it comes to the sector-leading awards that we've won right across the services that we provide in our city. And it's important that there be no cheap political shots in reports that talk about the future of this sector, most importantly in the context of employee costs. On the budget more broadly, I believe that as a council, we still need to be more transparent around the types of projects we're funding out of the developer contribution funds. This isn't clearly reported in the budget papers other than a consolidated financial figure across the city. And I think it is important that we do itemise and publish the sort of infrastructure so much as we reasonably can for each DCP fund to give clarity to ratepayers and to councillors on what is being funded from, where and when. The other factor that I think is pertinent to consider in the context of the pressures that we face is the significant decline in revenue from development contributions that are projected in these figures, which arguably leads to us having a net deficit this financial year. And another great example of why it is pertinent that we continue the conversation around developers paying their fair share, the role of the state and indeed the failure of the state, and importantly, the future viability of funding of councils to deliver the infrastructure and services that Wyndham residents expect and deserve. And with those comments, I wholeheartedly endorse the budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan, and I apologise I didn't see your hand go up. Thank you. Councillors, are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
Look, this is another budget. Could be the second last budget for this term of the council because there's one more to go before we finish the term. Now, I like to say that now we'll receive $217 million from the total rates and charges on this budget, which is forecasted for 1st July this to and going up to 30 June of 2020. Now, we appreciate that now a lot of money have been collected from the general rates, which is the ratepayers who's paying $1.79 million in rate and charges to the city of Wyndham. Now, I have been a concern about that when we're distributing the money towards the safety of the city is important, is a paramount, cannot be compromised. I've seen that number of submissions have been submitted by a Point Cook resident where we see that they're demanding for the police persons and other. That's what that tells us what the city and what people needs it. Now, I would like to say that this is a great budget. We have allocated always a good funds to meet the community needs. But however, though, I think we are somewhere a bit of a slipping off that floor and not thinking safety is important, and the CCTV cameras, such as other safety measures, can be taken to protect the features people's confidence, because a lot of robberies and other stuff happening, and the residents is demanding safety on the streets. Now, this is a great budget. Again, a lot of allocation for the sports and reserves, a lot of good initiative, as Councillor Josh Gilligan have said, that this is a great budget. Now, a lot of property developers now here having confidence, investing money, but what we're doing about the safeties. As I said that now, I would like to see that, we protect the families and we protect that those people have a welfare and provide some of the measures in upcoming months or in next budget. We should like to see that, more CCTV cameras or a safety measures be taken. I would be looking also that it's also highlight that how much the mayor gets allowance. It's do a lot of work, which is get fair share, but to get $269.76 a day, which is a fair share. But also, though, my colleagues were endorsing this budget, and I could not wait to make this point, as I always have expressed my views. It's $84 a day. What the local councils and local government gets. I think we are living in a modern society, and the wage has been a very agenda on a topic. People are having the commitments, and I'm sure that young people like Josh Gooligan and other peoples now, if they can survive on $84 a day, would be hard to believe, and they have to look for second jobs or do some other things. I would say that the local government or the council should make recommendations.
One more minute, sorry, one more minute,
A point
Councillor.
of order on something or other, misleading or something or other. I actually take offence to the fact that young councillors might do that. There might be some older ones as well.
Councillor Maynard, what's the point of order?
I don't remember. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Khan, you can continue, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just calculated $30,827 divided by 365 days. This give you $84. I think it's a fair share what we get, but I think there's room to improve. And I would like to say that, that therefore, because safety is an issue, and I take safety very serious,
You have 30
therefore
seconds,
I would
Councillor.
not be supporting this budget and like to see that, how things can be improved. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, do I have any other speakers to this motion? Okay, Councillor
I'd
McElhinney.
just like to make a comment that CCTV policy is under review and will be coming to council in the next couple of months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, if there are no other speakers for this item, I am going to put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.2.3, the K Road Cliffs Draft Master Plan. The report is on pages 34 to 40. The recommendation is on page 34, and the attachment is printed in a separate document on pages 101 to 120. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Maynard. Thank you. Councillor Hooper, would you like to speak to this item?
Only briefly, and that's to thank the officers for the professionalism going into this report. The K Road Cliffs are an asset for our region, and to see that we're taking it seriously, as in its preservation for future generations, is good. So, yes, thank you very much for the work.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Maynard, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak for the motion. Suffice to say that K Road Cliffs are a well-known and much-loved site in Wyndham, and the need to improve the site, excuse me, and better manage the area has been expressed by a committed group of residents for many years. Early engagement with the community highlighted some key areas for improvement, including drainage, rubbish removal and lack of vegetation, and it is pleasing to see that the Draft Master Plan has responded to these concerns. The Draft Master Plan includes drainage works to redirect runoff away from the fragile cliff edge, 2 new sealed car parks, viewing spaces overlooking the Werribee River, a new clifftop walking path, and fencing to limit access to the cliff edge, as well as a new staircase and revegetation works on the upper cliff area. Council has referred $800,000 towards improvement works at the site for the next financial year, and officers will work to attract state funding towards the project using Council's funding as leverage. Placing the Draft Master Plan on public exhibition is a significant step towards I've written my notes, but my mouse has gone, the battery of my mouse has gone to sleep, so I'm doing it manually. So placing the draft master plan on public exhibition is a significant step towards progressing the project, and the engagement process will provide a great opportunity for the community to have their say. The design is a strong example of community responsive design where local values and priorities have led to the formation of the future vision for a unique and much loved place in Wyndham. I encourage all councillors to support the placing of the K Road Cliffs draft master plan on public exhibition. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillors, do I have any speakers for this item? Councillor McAloney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say the K Road Cliffs, for me personally, is one of the most iconic tourist attractions that Wyndham has. And I've been following the consultation process over the last couple of months, and I look forward to the public making further comment and this being finalised in 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers on this item? I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.2.4, Protection of Strategic Agriculture Land, Plan Melbourne Action 17, feedback to Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. The report is on pages 41 to 48. The recommendation is on page 42. The attachments are on pages 49 to 65. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Hooper, do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Villagonzalo. Councillor Hooper, would you like to speak to this item? Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Gilligan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. There's a couple of points I wish to make. First of all, in relation to providing context, I guess, to the public about the level of power that councillors have when it comes to planning decisions versus the power of VCAT to override decisions. Obviously, this council made a decision in relation to an application pertaining to Green Wedge Zone that was overridden by VCAT, and a decision to issue a permit was made. And this is precisely why, when we have conversations around Green Wedge Zone and the importance of protecting the Green Wedge Zone, why we take this so seriously to actually make an application or indeed a response to DELP around the preservation of the Green Wedge Zone. It was extraordinary to read an article in Fairfax not too long ago where we discussed the reserve to the west of our municipality, particularly that Greenland area where there is a significant parcel of land that was promised 10 to 15 years ago would remain reserves and is yet to be purchased in its entirety by the Victorian government. Yet another example of local versus state and the failure of the state versus what we're intending to do on a local government level. So I think these are critical issues, not least of all the preservation of our agricultural land in Werribee South. I know this is a big issue, obviously, for Iramu ward councils, but more broadly to the economy here locally. And it's great for us to continue to argue and advocate for this, and to also be quite proud of the positions we're taking as a council and being quite consistent around getting a balance between development and urban development versus the preservation of quality agricultural land and the preservation of the environment. I think we get the mix right. It's unfortunate, though, that the other tiers of government do not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillors, are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
Madam Mayor, I take not what the council just colleague have said, that now it's important now to protect the green wage, and I think this is the great way of saying that what council can play the role now. It's important to draw a boundaries where the growth boundaries stops and where the green wages start. Now, in general, now the 30 years is the maximum time where the state government allows any area to be reviewed or rezoned. Now, I think it's important now we set the boundaries where green waste should stay and what can be done now. And we all understand that Werribee South, which irrigation district, plays the big role to offer a food court for the Melbourne. However, though, that boundaries need to be identified, and they're all ready, but we need to have a strategy to protect these. Now, it's out for the feedback. As George have said, that now sometimes the wicket can overrule, depends on what use we're applying it. But however, we must protect the green wage, and we need a green wage. There's a lot of residential lands out there, so it's important to have the nice environmental agricultural lands where we can provide the for generation food. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, do I have any speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.2.5, Local Government Power Purchase Agreement. The report is on pages 66 to 73. The recommendation is on page 67 and the attachment is printed in separate document pages 121 to 183. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Khan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Villagonzalo. Councillor Khan, would you like to speak to this item?
I think this is this is a good thing now. The local government is starting the PPA, the power purchase agreement, and looking forward to meet a target toward 12% by 2020, having the completely renewable energy, and 95% will be done by the 2040. I think that's a great initiative, and the council's been joining the local government and other parts of the government and being on that front foot. I think this shows that how much we care about. We really want to see that renewable energy can be used. It did also mention that now there would be a wind and solar. I'm not sure how much percentage will be the wind and how much will be solar. However, saying that though, we committing ourselves becoming 100% energy sufficient, that will be great. So we look forward to see that the Wyndham City Council signs a PPA with the companies who may want to invest money in solar and wind in Wyndham. I'll be supporting. That's a great initiative. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.3, Policy and Advocacy. Item 6.3.1, Werribee City Centre Parking Strategy. The report is on pages 74 to 81. The recommendation is on page 75 and the attachment is on page 82 to 93. Councillors, do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Councillor Maynard, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Madam Mayor, the Werribee City Centre Parking Strategy was recently exhibited for community consultation. Customers, workers, business owners and residents provided valuable feedback through the consultation process. This has seen a number of improvements incorporated into the final parking strategy presented here tonight. In Station Place, options were explored to change time limits and the location of taxi ranks and drop-off zones. We have listened to the stakeholders' feedback that the current arrangements in Station Place work best, and so the final parking strategy now reflects this. To optimise the performance of Station Place, I recommend that over the next 12 months traffic movements be monitored and further analysis be undertaken to inform whether further refinements in Station Place would be beneficial. Madam Mayor, it is also relevant to note that appropriate signage will also be put into Station Place to ensure it is clear that this is not a drop-off and pick-up area, and that area will now be located in Common Drive. The Werribee City Centre Parking Strategy is an important part of delivering on the community's desire for vibrant, safe, accessible and attractive places for people. It will see parking better managed throughout the Werribee City Centre. It will also make parking more convenient for customers and it will create more options for long-stay parkers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillors, are there any other speakers for this item? Councillors, I now move this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.3.2, Smart City Strategy. The report is on pages 94 to 101. The recommendation is on page 95 and the attachments are printed in a separate document on pages 184 to 225. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Arndt. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Walter Villagonzalo. Councillor Arndt, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to support the motion to adopt Wyndham's first Smart City Strategy, which is now ready to be released to the public. It gives me great pleasure to be the portfolio holder leading this journey. Wyndham will set a new standard for cities. Our future will be marked by innovation, opportunity, inclusion, creativity, and sustainability. We will harness technology and data in our bid to take a place amongst the leading global smart cities. We will deliver this strategy by executing the Smart City Implementation Plan. This plan sits under the Smart City strategy and represents our intent and commitment to the community. I am proud of this plan and look forward to supporting the initiative within. These initiatives have been prioritized based on what is most important to our community. They've told us and we've listened. Our plan focuses on transport, community safety, and these include the CCTV matter mentioned previously by Councillor Khan, education, environment, and sustainability, being more data-driven, partnership-oriented, being innovative, and lastly, not forgetting who we are here to serve, our community. And what I mean by this is that initiatives within the plan are citizen-centric. They are centered around our community, Madam Mayor. I would like to call out that for many of the initiatives, we will be engaging with our residents to further define their needs to ensure we deliver services and products that are value-add and meet residents' expectations. We will use sophisticated customer and user experience models and methods to do this. I want to thank the Smart City Office team led by Dr. Adam Molan, the Smart City Portfolio Committee members, my fellow councillors, and the senior executive for their works and supports, and those hundreds of residents from the community who participated during the consultation stage. This strategy won't come to today without all these efforts. I'm looking forward to working with staff and our partners on delivering the strategy and value to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Good work. I had Councillor Villa-Gonzalo, Councillor McElhinney. Thank you, Councillor Walter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend Councillor Ann and the Smart City Office on the development of Smart City Strategy 2019 to 2024 and support the adoption of this strategy. As you are aware, the Smart City Strategy has strong alignment with our economic growth strategy and investment attraction plan. The importance given to the evolution of the city's industries and commercial activities is a key characteristic of smart cities. I am pleased to see that building, promoting, and driving digital and clean technology innovation in order to provide employment and attract new businesses and new talents are part of our Smart City program. I look forward to supporting Councillor Ann and the team on delivering these initiatives that have strong alignment with the digital economy startup sector. There will be strong collaboration between our portfolios and educating the building technology, digital and startup entrepreneurial capacity within the community. I applaud Councillor Ann and the Smart City team for the significant traction our work in the smart city space has already gained, and look forward to smart technology becoming more integrated into the everyday functionality of council and the local community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor McElhinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm proud to support the motion to adopt the Wyndham's Smart City Strategy. We are well aware that Wyndham is growing and changing rapidly. Transforming to a smart city means creating a more livable city, a safer city, and a more sustainable city. It's about considerably deploying useful innovation that makes Wyndham a better place to live, work and play. A smarter Wyndham allows us to do more with less. It allows us to improve infrastructure management and better understand our social systems, but most importantly, it means proactive and evidence-based decisions and more targeted investments. I am very excited to see many projects targeted at safer communities. I know there has been tremendous interest in the work of the smart city space, and I have seen firsthand that it is global best practice. I'm pleased to see this commitment continue as the community deserves the best. I'd like to thank Adam Molam, the manager of Smart City, for the work that he has done to date. Particularly in representing our city, it's been amazing. Only recently, while I was in New York, I was able to pass on key information about our smart bins to the Battery Park Authority, and they were actually quite amazed. Most recently, I think the barbecues that have been displayed in Tarneet, I think will come out and be something that we'll be looking forward, and other people will start capturing and wanting to see how they can use them as well. So there's definitely a lot of room in the smart city space, and I thank Councillor Ahn for also all his hard work in this area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Hooper, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, 3 years ago, I never would have pictured walking into my home, yelling in the general direction of my TV and asking for the lights to go on. The innovation that we've seen with smart technology in our homes it's around. You can go down to JB Hi-Fi and buy it. And I can only just imagine where that technology is going to go into the future. And our community has always been an innovative, cutting-edge community. It's the birthplace of the Royal Australian Air Force. Through this, the State Research Farm, we innovated farming practices for Australia's eastern seaboard for decades. And with the CSIRO hosted, we've got certainly scientific endeavours happening on our very doorstep. So as a smart city, we're already there. But I have to commend the smart city team about making sure that this plan does not forget one key part, and that's people, as you touched on before, Councillor Ann. The community. A smart city does not exist without the people to make it, and this plan certainly sees that through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
Look, I have a lot of patience about seeing the city can become a smart city, and we are since doing a urban futures portfolios committees. We're meeting people giving a feedback, and I'm glad that, CCTV has been picked up here, which is that, as Councillor Ann have said, that, we could see that a city having CCTVs would be the great way of call the city as a smart city. But also, though, I'm not sure what's the definition of smart city. I'm maybe a bit old school. I'm trying to still understand. I think it's very hard to keep up with the technology now. So when we talk about the car parking here, now we're talking about drones now. So maybe the Melbourne have now drone technology starting in 2023. So can I say that now we really need to keep up? We have to have a strategies like thinking the future, what's going to happen. But I'm glad that, that Wyndham City Council is got now that strategy. At least we've got a strategy now, we're working. And I think the document is an important document we're now adopting today. It should be reviewed every year because it's very hard to keep up with the technologies as changes. I'm glad that we have a lot of NBN here, and even though the growth is going the speed was what we thought even more growth happening here, but we definitely need an NBN to support the technology. Otherwise, a lot of things won't work. And we have seen that a number of residents talking about. I would like to make a comment. A point cook is already smart cook, because point cook people buying online shopping in Australia, the number one suburbs. So can I say this is just a proven track record? We are actually onto the track. We're having people, smart people, using technology. They're not wasting, not creating congestion. They're buying shopping, sitting at home. So it's important that now our population is ready to adopt a smart city, some of the items we're discussing. I would like to see that now, if that will become a car parking meters in a city, they might have the new technology coming out with the chargers, so you can pay your fees, but you can pay your hourly if there's a charge car parking near future. And also, though, you can charge your car, because we'll be hoping to come, a city will have electric cars. Now, I'm sure some of the residents already have electric cars. They have not raised their voice, but I think we should be thinking how we can call the smart city. I think just calling a smart city won't become a smart city. We need to adopting and changing the few things. And can I say that now a lot of people criticize.
30 seconds, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Werribee city, we're changing now. People will see the Werribee now. There's a 5-star hotel coming, or what a star is, and there's other thing happening. We are changing landscape of Werribee, which is people hard to believe what Werribee could look like in future, and that will be a classic example of what we have changed the Werribee, and we're moving forward. So I would be pleased to support that and look forward to part of the change. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, are there any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.3.3, the draft Wyndham volunteering strategy. The report is on pages 102 to 106. The recommendation is on page 102. The attachments are printed in a separate document on pages 226 to 243. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McAliney. Councillor Maynard, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just before I start, I'd just like to say I certainly look forward to seeing the electric Ferraris around Wyndham. It would certainly be a sight to see. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, here I am. Now I've just lost my spot.
Volunteering strategy.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you. I'm certainly pleased to see the development of this draft strategy, volunteering strategy for Wyndham. I know the importance of volunteers in building the community. So many of our sporting clubs and our not-for-profit groups and organisations who rely on volunteers deliver a huge range of activities and events and services as well for our community, and certainly would not exist to a large degree if it was not for the huge amount of time that volunteers put in. As we know, many are completely volunteer-run in this community. I appreciate that many of these different people and groups have helped develop this strategy, and the strategy looks for new ways to help our residents find different volunteering opportunities so that they can fit into their busy lives, so that everyone can find a way to get involved in making a difference if they want to. Volunteering, as well as helping our clubs and other organisations, certainly allows residents to connect to their community. Certainly a very profound way of getting to know the people in the city. It is also about building a culture of recognition and celebration of our volunteers for all their efforts. I also appreciate that the strategy considers how we can come together to strengthen our volunteer involving clubs, groups and organisations to better recruit, manage and retain volunteers. I note the strategy contains a range of discrete projects, networks, training and ideas about sharing of knowledge and resources to achieve this. I certainly commend everyone involved in creating this strategy to date, Madam Mayor, and most importantly I commend those in the community who volunteer their time in the various activities of the city. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor McAliney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm in support of this much-needed 5-year draft volunteer strategy for Wyndham. Having been a volunteer since I was 12 years old, and I still continue to my age today, which all over the world there continues to be a decline in the number of people taking up formal volunteering roles. This trend is a huge threat to the ongoing viability of local clubs, groups and organisations that rely on volunteers. There are many reasons for this decline, including the changing nature of paid work and the changes in technology which are shifting how people can and want to give their time volunteering. As we are well aware, in Wyndham our residents face some huge barriers, such as a significant amount of time they spend commuting to work or study. It's not unusual for residents to spend up to 3+ hours a day. That's 15 hours a week, or as I always say, 2 days a week travelling if you work outside our city. The ability to fit volunteering into their lives is greatly compromised by the amount of their valuable time that is wasted while they're stuck in vehicles, in traffic and juggling picking up your children from often after school care, grandparents or picking up your children, your school children. Many of Wyndham's residents are also new in the area and sometimes new to the country too. They are busy juggling the demands of building their lives and raising their young families. And we can't forget that we do have 95 babies a week being born in our city. For migrants, they are also developing their understanding of how they operate in Australia, how things operate in Australia. They may not be aware of how they could make volunteering possible in their lives and the multiple benefits that flow from volunteering. I welcome the strategy's approach, in particularly tackling the complexity from a number of fronts. It commits to council working together with our local groups, clubs and organisations. And I must say, as Councillor Maynard mentioned, over the weekend I spent time with two sporting groups, and that was the Point Cook Netball Group and the Point Cook Centrals Football, and I congratulate those two clubs for the amount of resources, the number of volunteers and the work that goes in behind the scenes for two fantastic clubs. It really became very evident how much there is how much time there is people put in after hours. The strategy explores ways in which the flexibility can be built into volunteering roles and knowledge can be shared amongst the groups and with residents, so the community can be strengthened and our local groups can continue to operate and deliver the enormous benefits to our residents. I look forward to hearing the community's feedback on the draft strategy prior to final endorsement. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
Mayor, Councillor Kim McLean have stolen my word. I think I would like to definitely say that number of residents, migrants here who migrate to the city and they are struggling to get the nice jobs or living on a, and looking after their day-to-day affairs. But can I say the timely willing given for the good common cause without a financial gain is what volunteering is. Now, many migrants will maybe like to do that, but I think this strategy need to be, I think that if there can be more workshops, they document could be forwarded to their temples or mosques that would be willing to go and be part of that. I think this is a great way. A lot of people like to be part of that volunteering, but they may not have understanding, new to the country, new to the city. So that will really, that is a great document we're now giving to, and I think people love to recognize if they work hard without a financial gain and do a good common work for the community will be really good. Now we know that now in Victoria 13.8% to 19.2% of Victorians are doing volunteering, and the more likely to win them will do less, and I understand because is a young families, and as Councillor Kim McLean have said that now 95 babies born per a week is put a pressure to having a time and giving to the community. But we have seen that many local community groups actually have given a lot of time, and we do celebrate volunteer awards. So that's a good way of recognizing their hard work and their willing work and good common cause for they're doing without a financial gain. So I'm pleased to say that I will be happy to pass on to the community, put on my Facebook so people can enroll more and be part of the volunteering work what Wyndham Council offer, but also other groups offering in community. I'll be supporting, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.3.4, Maternal and Child Health and Wellness Service Statement. The report is on pages 107 to 110. The recommendation is on page 107 and the attachment is on pages 111 to 116. Councillors, do I have a move of this item? Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Thank you, Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Councillor Gilligan, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, very briefly. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of points I think it's worth making in relation to this statement. First of all, a predominant amount of people that work in child and maternal health here in this city actually live locally. And this is a particular sector that is high quality jobs, well-paying jobs because of the work that they do. These are frontline workers that deal with some of the most complex situations in terms of the myriad of demographics that we have in this city. And I'll just give one brief example of an interaction I've had with constituents and our staff. It was a situation where we have the no jab, no pay, where some families, particularly when it comes to immunisation, as Madam Mayor, you would know, you deal in this space as well, had issues in terms of enrolment in our early childhood education and the dilemma, at least in their eyes, of going through the immunisation program. That was dealt with swiftly, as if it was an everyday expectation of our child and maternal health staff in what is a really complex area to be involved with in terms of religion versus government policy, but ultimately delivering the best outcome in terms of the protection of our younger generations, but also making sure that that particular constituent had the satisfaction of being, I guess, educated in this space, but not only that, ensuring that their child was enrolled in our kindergartens in a safe way that was consistent with government policy. The other point I want to make more broadly, and goes to some of the comments I've made about the failure of the state and more importantly, the way in which our budget is set. And I've raised this in the past, I have a real issue with the state government not honouring its agreements. We have a 50-50 agreement with the state government. This financial year is $940,000 of money that ratepayers are funding for an agreement the state government fails to honour. And this is going up and up and up. It will cost us millions. And let's not forget that for every dollar that we're spending in employee costs and service delivery is one less dollar on our roads, our parks and our infrastructure. We've got to get this across in a clear and concerted way. We'll do our fair share when it comes to delivering services. We'll do our fair share when it comes to spending the appropriate things on education, infrastructure and service delivery. But what we expect is when you sign an agreement, you honour it. And if we keep seeing TV ads from the state government talking about the federal government honouring its fair share, how about you look at the agreement that we have struck and signed with the Department of Health and Human Services and not force us to spend 61% of a 50-50 sharing agreement? Because if ratepayers knew this, they have every right to be up in arms, and we need to keep talking about this in a simple way to explain every single dollar more we're spending, because we can't introduce levies or taxes, nor should we necessarily on ratepayers further to fund this. Every dollar that we have to spend above and beyond this agreement is one less dollar for the parks, the roads, the footpaths, the infrastructure that we've got to get on and deliver in this city. And I think it's important that we talk that up when it comes to statements like this, but also recognise the great work that's being done by child and maternal staff here at the City of Wyndham. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Ahn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My speech will be very brief. As we all know, as one of the fastest growing municipalities in Australia, it's more than 90 babies born each week. I think this statement is really important. It clearly states our vision and value proposition and our role and, the Council's service commitments. And I just want to thank the good work, done by the officers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this item to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.3.5, Ageing Well in Wyndham, the Wyndham City Aged Care Service Statement. The report is on pages 117 to 121. The recommendation is on page 117 and the attachment is on pages 122 to 128. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Maynard, would you like to speak to this item? Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Gilligan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I find this issue to be quite difficult on a personal level in terms of voting in this particular policy area. We have an issue with the federal government, again, not delivering its fair share of funding requirements and us footing the bill in excess of $3 million more than what would be otherwise spent in terms of subsidies versus the operating costs of aged care. However, I do note that there has been a conversation, and my understanding is the budget did consider an expansion and an extension of the CHSP funding. And on that basis, there is a dilemma about whether Council does ultimately exit, in my view, given that there is an extension of funding. Ultimately, this statement does go to the public, and ultimately the public has its say. And it will really be interesting to see whether or not there is any, if at all, interest in the community around this issue. And that's not to say that we've done significant and well-placed policy work in this area, but I would note that there has been a change at a federal level since the conversation development of this service statement, which does lend itself to a broader conversation about the key pressures that are placed under to exit technically no longer exist by virtue of an extension of funding. So I think there does need to be a conversation in the context of whether the community does believe that extension is well considered or not, and that is why I do have some difficulty in relation to the service statement that we're adopting. So I wish to put that on the record, and that will be a matter for everyone else to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this item to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 6.4, strategic and town planning. Councillors, I'm just going to ask one more time, are there any conflicts of interest for these upcoming items? Okay. Councillor, 6.4.1.
I have the house in the same area, so I thought maybe I'll declare my conflict of interest. I don't own any development properties, but I have a house, so I would like to declare a conflict of interest. I will leave chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. I'll ask you to leave the chamber as we move into 6.4.1. Item 6.4.1, the Wyndham North Development Contributions Plan Project Implementation Program. The report is on pages 129 to 136. The recommendation is on page 130. The attachment, there are nil attachments. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Maynard, do you want to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to speak to this report. I note that this report recommends the adoption of the 2019-20 Wyndham North Development Contribution Payment Project Implementation Program. That is certainly a mouthful, or as we call it, the DCP-PIP. The preparation of this program on an annual basis enables Council to monitor and assess the required timing of the developer contributions. Funded infrastructure and facilities, its timely and coordinated rollout. I note that the program continues to prioritise the delivery of Leaks Road and key roads connecting to it, whilst also ensuring the prioritisation of recreation and community infrastructure aligning with current and expected development patterns. The alignment of the program for the delivery of the Western Roads package, Western Roads upgrade package is also beneficial, Madam Mayor. Scrolling slowly. For these reasons, I support the officer's recommendation to adopt the 2019-2020 Wyndham North DCP-PIP for the coming financial year. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.4.2, the Wyndham West Development Contributions Plan Project Implementation Program. The report is on pages 137 to 147. The recommendation is on page 137. Attachments are nil. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Maynard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Maynard, do you want to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I note that this report recommends the adoption of the 2019-20 Wyndham West DCP Project Implementation Program. The preparation of this program on an annual basis enables Council to monitor and assess the required timing of the DCP funded infrastructure and facilitate its timing and coordinated rollout. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all. Rather short. It's a little bit like it was before, but yeah, same place, different areas.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this item, motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.4.3, planning permit application WYP 10652/18, development of the land by the construction of 24 dwellings at land known as number 6 Blake Court, Truganina. The report, Councillor McElhinney.
I'll be putting an alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Can you read that out?
Yep.
Or do you just want to summarise what it is and then, yes, thank you.
That council resolved to issue a notice of refusal to grant planning permit WYP 10652/18 for the construction of 24 dwellings at 6 Blake Court, Truganina, on the following grounds: that 1, the proposed construction would be contrary to the objective state planning policy, built environment and heritage clause 15 and housing clause 16 of the Wyndham planning scheme, as it will negatively impact on the existing neighbourhood character and will not result in a good planning outcome. 2, that the proposed construction would be contrary to the objectives of the local planning policies, urban environment clause 21.06-1, neighbourhood character, and clause 21.07-3, and the neighbourhood character clause 22.04, and as such would fail to be consistent with the requirements for an orderly planning of the area, having a negative impact of the amenity of the area, and would fail the decision guidelines of clause 65.01 of the Wyndham planning scheme. 3, that the proposed development is not in keeping with the existing neighbourhood character and is in an overdevelopment of the area. That 4, the scale and intensity of the development within a court location will detrimentally impact an amenity and does not respond to the features of the surrounding area. That 5, the proposed development does not accord with clause 55.03-7, safety objectives standard B12, in that it fails to ensure the layout of the development provides for the safety of residents, and 6, that the proposed development does not accord with clause 55.03-9, access objective standard B14 with regard to the requirement that developments must provide for access for service, emergency and delivery vehicles. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillor McAliney, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've considered this application at 6 Blake Court long and hard, as outlined in my concerns to refuse this application for 24 dwellings tonight. As a responsible authority, we have to consider applications on their merit, and my decision is not based on any lobbying behind the scenes by residents. Applications like this, I say, we only get one chance to get it right. As once built, the residents will feel the long-term detrimental effects of our decision. There is no going back. Do I feel comfortable with this application getting passed tonight under the current conditions? Absolutely not, Madam Mayor. We've proposed to place 24 dwellings, 18 double-storey and 6 triple-storey in a court. I'm not against high-density living. Even more recently, my experience several weeks ago in North America, I had the opportunity to see vibrant, activated high-density living, and it can work if appropriate infrastructure and a connectivity of services is in place. This permit certainly doesn't fit neither with the amenity of the area or the ambience of the neighbourhood, and is most certainly an overdevelopment of the site. The planning permit for the additional 24 dwellings is 21 dwellings of 3 bedrooms and 3 of 2 bedrooms. I note 26 objections. However, I have no doubt if we advertise further that we would have got more objections from neighbouring streets. And I remind everyone that there's only 9 dwellings in this court. A wrong decision tonight will no doubt impact the lives of these residents who a number of years ago chose to buy and live in a court to bring up their families, who no doubt have their street get-togethers and their kids play cricket in the court, and even, as I saw on Sunday, dogs playing in their front yards. And no doubt they paid for the extra privilege of living in a court. The street, 234 movements per day, or traffic movements per day, well, we all know potentially can be unrealistic, given that up to 2 to 3 cars per dwelling could reside at 6 Blake Street. We also need to consider the long-term consequences of making such a decision and the enforcement issues that later present to this council once a development of this magnitude is built, and often forgotten. Parking in the streets, the all too often unsightly look of nature strips congested with cars, which we are seeing escalating by the complaints by neighbours in the city. Narrow streets, a vehicle only needs to be parked on both sides of the street, and there is a potential to place the street in lockdown with emergency vehicles unable to gain access. There are no footpaths on either side of Blake Court, so effectively residents will be walking on nature strips. I'm a third-term councillor here and have seen many planning permits and a city more than double in size. Am I prepared to let this go through as reasonable? To say this scale and intensity is acceptable, I say certainly not. There are times I question myself as a councillor, as we frequently are open to criticism. We are here to represent and make decisions for the city, some unpopular, some popular. However, on this occasion, this planning decision at 6 Blake Court has reminded me why I'm here, and it is why for all other reasons I've outlined in my objections tonight, I ask my colleagues to vote with me to refuse this overdevelopment, as we will be significantly destroying the amenity of this court and the livelihood of every resident that lives there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Well spoken. Councillors, do I have any other speakers for this item? A bit long, but is that, yeah, yes, okay, yes.
Just briefly, just in addition to the points that Councillor McElhinney has eloquently made, there's also the single entry and exit point too, that needs to be highlighted in relation to so many of these dwellings in this particular subject site. I have serious concerns about that, and thus another reason why I do support Councillor McElhinney's alternate resolution tonight. But more broadly, this council approves quite a lot of planning applications per annum. And in the context of strategies that we put in place around managing growth and development in the city, it will be interesting to see the weight that is given in the event this is challenged to our ability as a responsible authority to take not only our roles as within the context of the planning scheme, but also we are elected representatives as well. And it is frustrating sometimes when you have a planning scheme that prohibits that aspect from being considered. Whether we like it or not, it is in some respects a aspect that is considered in planning applications. And particularly when you look at the overall site and nature and the neighbourhood of this particular area, and the subject site itself is entirely inconsistent with what is expected in what is clearly a very established neighbourhood that has existed for quite some time, probably when I was in my single digits of life. So on that basis, I second Councillor McElhinney's alternate resolution. As a young person, as Councillor Carr points out. Thank you.
Councillors, any other speakers? Thank you, Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I just want to applaud this alternative motion. I drove down to this spot to have a look for myself at the actual subject location, and I could not believe the proposal and how out of place it was. It truly is just a small neighbourhood area, and the actual infrastructure around it could not possibly support the level of development that this would bring, or the movements or issues that this would bring. So I absolutely 100% are behind this alternative motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I need to be quick. Councillor Calm, you can go.
Thank you. Look, I would not be supporting the Councillor McElhinney's notice of motion, because it's clearly outlined that so many recommendations have done officers gone through the entire application. And I would like to say that now, if we look at the number of conditions put down on this one, it simply shows that how carefully Wyndham City Council officers are paying attention to meet every single requirement of this application. Now, a scary campaign will not change the outcome of this application, because it meets the old tick and the boxes what is required under the planning scheme. If you look at that now, it clearly shows that how great this site is. Do not be scared to approach. It's a high density, because it talks about on a page, it says there's a 1.5 kilometre from the Wyndham Village Shopping Centre, 5.2 kilometres from the Williams Laney, close to the shops and other facilities what the residents needed. Now we talk about affordable housing. Affordable housing comes to a strong planning. This is a great example of Wyndham City Council's strong planning and having a measure on how they amended. So if you look at now, it talks about dwelling, which is meets on 6 to meet the standard B29. It meets the additional 500 meters in the length of the car, or the requirement. Now, people talks about in technical terms, neighbourhood character. How you define neighbourhood character is defined on individual sites, defined on high density, low density, or is a medium density. Now, this site meets the requirement. Now, I do understand that now, Councillor McLean have said that now there's a number of people who bought a house next to that object, to that site. I think they have right. They spend a lot of money now. The kids who were playing 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the cricket there, and of course they were, back then it was a zoning differently. Now the zoning have been changed. So can I say that now,
1 minute, Councillor.
thank you, Madam Mayor, we have to treat application, not emotions, based on planning rules. And this is a great example of we should not run a scary campaign. So that way, the good development could take a development in a city. And I said we should not be scared in supporting this now. You got to support. If this will get rejected today, I'm telling you, you'll be wasting council's money. More likely, this application is going to win in a weekend, and ratepayers going to pay the price. So I would ask my fellow councillors, put the motion aside. I know it's hard because a lot of objections come through, but we've got to trust the engineer, the planning officers who have approved this application. So I would not be supporting the alternate motion, which is based on emotions, based on neighbourhood character. I will be supporting the council officers' report, which is true and will stand in weekend if that will go to. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor, are you foreshadowing moving the original motion if this alternative motion is lost? Okay, thank you. Councillor McAloney, there still might be some other speakers before you get your right of reply. Councillors, are there any other speakers on this item? Thank you. Councillor McAloney, you have a right of reply. Then I will put this motion to a vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to make the point that if we were all ticking the box, then why do we have elected officials that are elected every 4 years to represent our community? I read the reports, I make the decisions based on the recommendations. I look at the recommendations, Councillor Khan, and then I make the decision on what's best for the interests of this community. If we were only going to sit here and tick the box, then why are we all here? Why are we all sitting here? Why do we spend week after week, hours, many hours on this, representing our community, attending budgets, going to budget briefings on Saturday mornings, most of us, to just tick the box? Well, I certainly, if I'm going to tick the box, well, I may as well not be here. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, I now put this motion, the alternative motion, to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, Councillor Khan. The motion is carried. Item, yes we go. Thank you. Item 6.4.4, planning application WYP 11252/18. Construction of a second dwelling to the rear and the construction of a carport for the existing dwelling at 17 Wilton Close, Wyndham Vale. The report is on pages 182 to 202. The recommendation is on pages 183 to 187, and the attachments are on pages 203 to 208. Councillor Maynard, you have indicated that you have a conflict for this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. I would like to declare a conflict of personal interest in relation to this item, is that one of the objectors is a close personal friend of my family.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. So, Councillors, Councillor Maynard has made an application to Council to be exempt from voting on this item due to a conflicting personal interest. These types of conflict are handled a little differently, as there is an option for the councillor to remain in the chamber to vote. For the vote, I apologise, not to vote, for the vote. However, Councillor Maynard has elected not to vote on this item. Therefore, we need a motion to accept his application. It is important to note that in accordance with the Local Government Act section 79B(4), Council is required to accept Councillor Maynard's application to be exempt from voting on this item and cannot unreasonably withhold this consent. Therefore, councillors, can I have a mover for the motion that in accordance with section 79B(4) of the Local Government Act, council consents to accept councillor Maynard's application to the council to be exempted from voting on item 6.4.4. Councillors, do I have a mover? Thank you, councillor Hooper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Ahn.
I want to speak on this.
Councillors, I now put this...
Hang
Oh,
on, I'm
sorry.
speaking. I just want to point out that that is more words than the planning
I know.
application. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
It's the most I'm allowed to speak at a council meeting.
My apologies, I just had to say.
I enjoyed that. It's been a while. Yeah, so councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. The motion is carried. Councillor Maynard will leave the chamber while we discuss this item and a vote is taken. Wow. That's a good point. So, councillors, do I have a mover for the item 6.4.4? Thank you, councillor Khan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Gilligan. Councillor Khan, would you like to speak to this item?
I think it's a great, and as the many councillors believes, we'll not be here to supporting that the planning applications. We have a right to speak, and that's why the elected, we've been elected here. And I would like to say that I think it's a great way of creating a second, what we call that, a dwelling, an existing dwelling now. So as I said that, and I still say that affordable housing is a major issue, and government cannot afford to put everywhere roads and infrastructure. I think it's important now. We work along with the planning scheme of Wyndham, which our argue now, some of the councillors that don't like second dwelling at the back, because it's going to now have a problem, or they believe it's a problem with the neighbourhood character. So they should now look into it, because it's important that how we're now following the planning scheme, and how it's important now to granting this application. Officers have done a great job. I would be supporting as I did last one, and I believe now it meets the all ticks, and it's got a lot of conditions on it, how to use a car parking, how to have a site access, and it's got 2 years to comply with the standard. So it meets the all ticks the boxes, and it's important that it meets the planning scheme of Wyndham. And yeah, so I'll be supporting Madam Mayor. I highly encourage people to follow the planning scheme.
Thank you, councillor Khan. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam.
Councillor Gilligan.
No one could doubt the cardboard tick the box nature of your points of view there, councillor Khan. I
you.
second the motion.
Thank you, councillor Gilligan. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Other report. 6.5.1, the Wyndham Aboriginal Community Centre Integrated Family Centre lease to One Tree Community Services. The report is on 209 to 211. The recommendation is on page 209. The attachment is on page 212. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, councillor Hooper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Khan. Do you want to talk to this motion, councillor Hooper? Do I have any other speakers for this motion? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.5.2, the Western Leisure Services Management Services Agreement. The report is on page 213 to 216. The recommendation is on page 213, attachments nil. Thank you, councillor Maynard, as the mover. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor McElhinney. Councillor Maynard, would you like to talk to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I most certainly would.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, Western Leisure Services' first term of the Management Services Agreement included establishing a new business from scratch, recruiting and mobilising a new team of staff, and commencing the operation of 2 brand new facilities, Aquapulse and Eagle Stadium, with no operating history. We also are aware, Madam Mayor, of the success that this operation and both facilities have had, when those in the community would naysay what this council did. And this council was thinking outside the box and was very, very proactive in agreeing to go down the passage of having an organisation separately run our facilities. We are now experiencing 2 million visits per year across the Winactive network of facilities. There are over 3,500 children participating in the Learn to Swim program at Aquapulse and a diverse range of community partnerships in place which support Wyndham residents to be active. Madam Mayor, when we built this facility, especially Aquapulse in Derrimut Road, if we had have had the land, we could have put an extra pool in, given the demand that this city puts on its facilities. So it's certainly a much needed facility, and we can be very, very pleased with the progress over the past 4 years. And I most certainly look forward to seeing what can be achieved over the next term of the Management Services Agreement. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Gilligan.
I just want to second and absolutely agree with Councillor Maynard's points there and commend the council on what would have been, I don't quite remember that far back, but it would have been a pretty big move, but nevertheless a great example of what we can do in local government. And quite frankly, the point I was making earlier tonight in terms of this service model being applied to other business units in council. So I completely agree. This is a success story that we loudly and proudly speak about, and I do really want to put on the record my thanks to the term of council that did take the steps to back that in, because I suspect it would have been a big issue. And so well done to Councillor Matt and others that were back then in the inception of this particular model. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Agreed. Councillors, any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
Madam Mayor, look, I was part of that last term's council when this was sort of made up, and it was great to see that that the organisation have grown now and they got a lot of support, they got a lot of membership. But what I've seen now, in general now, a lot of people's making complaint that the pricing is a bit of an issue. Now, so I would definitely like to support this agreement and continue for 5 years, but the pricing for that, which is the later centre need to be reviewed. And what is happening now, people saying that before it used to be small and that people can afford it, bring their own food, bring their own things. There was a booking was a cheap. I know we're offering the state art facilities such as, the speakers and all things, but as we like to put this organisation on a note is saying that, the resident demands a bit of a pricing a correction. So in future, moving forward, that if that can be done, that will be good, and we'll be supporting that. I think it's a great work they're doing it.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 6.5.3, the Hong Kong Business Meetings Report. The report is on pages 217 to 227. The recommendation is on page 217, attachments nil. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Gibbons, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Walter Villagonzalo. Councillor Gibbons, would you like to speak to this item?
No, except to say that when Kate Roffey's available, we'll get her to come and give us a briefing on this.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
I think it's a great way of meeting and finding the PP partners, and we'd like to say that now Kate Ruff is doing great work, and I think if there could be more business meeting can be done as such, this one, that could help, and I'm sure that, there are a lot of people from the Chinese or South Asian background here. I think having meeting like this will definitely benefit in both ways. I hope so now that the meeting could be considered some other countries such as India or South Asian country, which is the economic power as compared to these emerging and growing economies. So that way we can have a diversify a business within our city that will balance rather than going in one provider in one direction. But definitely, I think we'll also like to see that we can have that more meetings like this with the European, though we can invite more investors rather than just the one. So I think the more business meeting like this will help. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Motion is carried. Item 6.5.4, Assembly of Councillors. The report is on page 228. The recommendation is on page 228. Attachments on pages 229 to 236. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Do you want to speak to this item, Councillor Hooper? Do any other councillors want to speak to this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 7, notices of motion, nil. Item 8, council seal, nil. Item 9, contract summary, nil. Item 10, questions with notice from the public gallery. Madam Mayor, do we have any public... sorry. So, Madam CEO, do we have any questions from the gallery this evening?
No, not this evening, Madam Mayor.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, my
no.
God, okay. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it must be. Thank you. 11, councillor delegates reports, 11.1. Councillors delegate reports, they're on pages 237 to 238. The recommendation is on page 238 and the pages are on 239 to 253. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Arndt, thank you. Are there any councillors that would like to speak to their report tonight? Okay. Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 12, urgent business, nil. Item 13, confidential business. Councillors, can I have a mover to suspend standing orders for confidential business?
Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
I'd like to move the motion that pursuant to section 89(2) of the Local Government Act 1989, standing orders be suspended and this meeting of council be closed to members of the public in order for council to discuss confidential business.
Do I have a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Khan. And I thank you.
I thought they were doing over there.
Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that recommendations of the closed meeting of council with regard to confidential matters be adopted.
Thank you. Councillors, do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Khan. I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Councillors, all those in favour for this vote? Thank you. All those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. An excellent meeting tonight, and I declare this meeting closed at 8:30 p.m. sharp. Thank you. Well done.